So we have Yehuda Leib on the phone here in New York. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah. We're going to start in Perikaf Bet, chapter 22. And the Parsha has a lot of mitzvahs. And like we were learning in Rav Steinsaltz, none of the Meforshim say that as much as they tried, they couldn't find a natural flow from one to the other. And Rav Steinsaltz says that the point of the Torah is that, when you try to organize the Torah and say, oh, this is this category, this is that category, and so on, that's your own categorization, but that's not Hashem's categorization. And that we have to accept the entire Torah as it is and understand that the Torah is basically a bridge that begins down here in this world and reaches all the way up to Hashem. That's the essence of what Rav Steinsaltz says in the Parsha. Is that correct, Yehuda Leib?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we learn on the phone every day, we learn Rav Steinsaltz. So we finished Rav Steinsaltz on the Parsha. Okay, so chapter 22, do you have it? Yeah. So these are the laws of Hashavat Avedah, returning lost objects. Lo tireh et shor achicha o tzeyon idachim baderech. You may not see the ox of your brother or his sheep lost on the road. And idachim, right? They're lost. V'talamta mehem, and act as if you didn't see them. But rather, Hashev teshivem la'achicha, the mitzvah is that you have to return them to your brother. Where are you? Chapter 22. Kaf bet. Peri kaf bet. You're in the wrong, you're Peri kaf bet? Yeah, there you are, the beginning of Peri kaf bet. Okay, so the pshat in the verses, you may not see them and act like you didn't see them, right? So now the word vitalamta itself actually means you will act like you didn't see them. So the rabbis interpret that there are cases where you are allowed to act like you didn't see the lost object. For example, if it would be a shame for you to pick up that lost object, you may not. You are exempt from the mitzvah. For example, let's say if you're Talmid Chochem and you find a woman's garment, that's an undergarment or something like that. Like imagine a Rav walking in the street with a woman's undergarment. It would be a big embarrassment. Not everybody would say, "Oh, he's returning a lost object." In any case, so there are times that v'talamta that you may act like you didn't see it, but otherwise, the fact that it says Hashev teshivim in the general understanding of whenever the verb is doubled, Hashev teshivim, is translated as you shall surely return them, and the Gemara interprets there's a number of mitzvot where you have the verb is doubled. Tochiach tochiach, maton titain. That's not quite a mitzvah for us. That's Hashem doing that, right? But in any case, so the Gemara says, "Afilu meya pa'amim," even if you have to return it 100 times. In other words, let's say your neighbor's sheep is lost today, and you find it, you have to return it, and then again tomorrow it's lost again, you have to return it again. In other words, regardless of how often you have to do it. Ve'im lo karov achicha elecha, and if your brother is not close to you, in other words, he's not your neighbor or something like that, v'lo yadato, and you don't you don't know him. So what are you supposed to do? So then you are to bring it into your house, and the lost object should be with you, the lost animal should be with you, until your brother comes to claim it. And then you are to return it to him. So Rashi says, well, let's first, before the Rashi, what does it mean that your brother is not close to you? Well, let's say he lives in a different city or in a different country, right? Somebody was visiting Israel, they lost something, and you found it. You have to then travel to their country to return it. No, you have to take it home and keep it until he comes to claim it, right? What if he's just in the same city, but he's far away from your home? So you also do the same. You don't have to go deliver it to him, even though the Torah says, Hashev teshivim la'achicha, you shall return the last object to your brother. It doesn't mean that you have to be the one that takes that has to go and do the delivery. But rather, you bring it into your home or into your farm, your barn, whatever it is, and you keep it there until your brother comes to claim it. And your brother means what? Your fellow Jew, right? If you find an object let's say you're walking on a street in New York, let's say you're walking where the majority of the people are not Jewish, and you find something, so then you're not obligated to return it, you may keep it. But if you find something in a place where you know that it was lost by a Jew, then you have the obligation. Achicha means your brother, means your fellow Jew. In the world, the rule that most people live by is finders keepers, losers weepers, right? And nevertheless, the Torah says that that's not the law for us. We have to return lost objects. Okay? Now, how do you return it? Right? How do you return it? So therefore, the Talmud discusses that. And it talks about how you're supposed to announce that you found such and such, right? and the question is, okay, where do you make the announcement? So nowadays you have internet, you have Facebook, you have all kinds of things like that, right? But in the olden days, you would have to announce the lost object in a place where the owner is can hear about it. If you announce that you found something and you make the announcement in a place where it's not likely that the owner is not going to know that you found his sheep or his cow or whatever it is, so then you're not doing the mitzvah of returning the lost object properly. So in the olden days, 3 times a year, everyone was expected, all the men were expected to come to the Beit HaMikdash for the 3 holidays. So there was a special rock. I forgot the name of it right now. I mean, I don't know if I forgot, but I can't recall the name of it right now. And it was known that it was at this particular rock in Yerushalayim that people who lost objects would come there, and people who found objects would come there to announce that they found something. And this would, and you would have to do this over the Shalosh Regalim. For once you did it 3 times over the 3 holidays of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, then you didn't have to announce it anymore. But then the question is, okay, what did you do with it then? Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, so Rashi on the second verse, Ad Rosh Achicha Oto, he says like this: you keep it until your brother comes to claim it. So Rashi says, did you imagine that you would give it to him before he asks for it? Obviously not. So what does it mean, Ad Rosh Achicha Oto? So Rashi explains that the rabbis explained, Ela Darshehu, you have to examine him, Shelo Yehi Ramai. You have to make sure that the person you're returning to is the real owner of the object, that he's not a thief. Because let's say somebody comes and says, oh, I heard you found a watch. I lost a watch, right? And you just give it to him, and you didn't ask any questions to make sure that it's really his, then if the next day somebody comes and says, hey, I heard you lost a watch, it was my watch, and it turns out that you gave the watch to the wrong person, it's your responsibility. You would have to pay for that watch. Why so? Because the Torah basically makes you a guardian over the lost object. You found something, the Torah says you are now the guardian of that, and as the guardian, it's your responsibility to keep it for the rightful owner and to return it to the rightful owner. So how do you know if the person coming to claim it is the rightful owner or not? So the answer is that they have to provide you with a siman. They have to provide you with an identification mark on the lost object that would demonstrate that it's theirs. In other words, there's something that it's logical to say that only the owner would know about that. Okay? So, but let's say you find a watch and somebody comes and says, well, it was a Timex. And you found the Timex. Well, that's not really much of a siman, because there are many Timex watches. You know, somebody says it had a yellow gold wristband. You know, a metal wristband. That's not a siman. Every watch has a wristband, and many of them have a gold one, right? But if they can give you more details, it had a scratch on it. It had this particular thing, something that only the owner, somebody who wears it every day, is likely to know. Then you know that you're giving it back to the real owner. But otherwise, you can't just give it to just anyone who claims that he lost it. Right? Clear? Then the next Rashi in Pasuk Bet says, "V'hashivotolo," you are to return it to him. So what does that mean? Obviously, you're to return it to him. So Rashi says, "Shetehei bo hashava." You have to return it in a way that you're actually returning something to him. What does that mean? Shelo yochal bebeitcha kedei damav. That the animal, let's say you found an animal, right? The animal has to eat. Now, who's supposed to pay for that food? Obviously, the owner of the animal is the one that's responsible for the cost, Now, what if you found a sheep and he doesn't come back? The owner doesn't show up for a long time. And let's say after a month of feeding this sheep, the cost of feeding the animal is already greater than the value of the animal. So let's say, so what would you do then? If you're going to keep that sheep around, could be the owner's going to come back in 3-4 months from now, and you're going to present him. You'll give him back the sheep, but you're going to present him with a bill that is way more than the value of the sheep, right? So Rashi explains here that you should return it to him, meaning to say you keep it and make sure that when you return it to him, there is something to return. So Rashi says, "Shelo yochal bebeitcha kedei damav." You don't keep it so long that the animal is eating up food in your house that is going to be equal to what the value of the animal is, because then you're not going to have anything to return. And then you're going to say to the owner, okay, pay me for all the food, right? So Bikan Amru, so from here the rabbis interpreted that Kol Davar Shoseh Ve'ochel, everything that produces income and it consumes also. So Yaseh Ve'yochal, let it produce and let it eat. Sheino Oseh Ve'ochel, but if it doesn't produce any income and it's just consuming, Yimacher, so what you do is you sell it. So for example, if you found a chicken that lays eggs, and the eggs are producing enough income to pay for the chicken feed, so then you keep the chicken, because when the owner comes, you'll have what to return to him. But if you find an animal that's not producing anything, and it's only an expense, so then what you do is you sell it. When the owner comes and he provides the proper identification of what he lost, you'll give him back the money that you got for selling the animal. Do you have a question? No?
Cash is different.
Cash is different. We didn't get to cash yet. Okay? But cash doesn't eat. Right?
No, there's nothing to identify.
All right. We'll get to cash soon. Says the next verse, "V'chein ta'aseh lechamoro," and so you shall do for his donkey, if you find his donkey. "V'chein ta'aseh lesimrato," and so you shall do for his garment. "V'chein ta'aseh lechol avedat achicha asher tobat mimenu umitzata," and so you shall do for all the lost objects of your brother that he lost and you found. Lo tuchal litalem, you may not act as if you didn't see it. And notice in the verse, first of all, there's something called klal and there's something called prat. There's a general rule and there's a particular prat. It's like the Hebrew word prat moved into other languages as well. Prat, P-R-T, part, right? Without the vowel in it. Prat is like a detail, okay? So which words in this verse are the general principle and which words are the particulars? Look at the verse 3. Which is the general category and which are the particulars?
In between the chamor and the simba.
Well, what have you got? You've got so you started out with a sheep and with and an ox, and now we've got a chamor, we've got a simla, we've got a donkey, we've got a garment, and go on. What does it say after?
וכן תעשה לכל עבודת אחיך אשר תאבד ממנו ומצאת
Umitzata. So now that's what is that? Is that a particular or is that a general?
You mean anything that you find?
Right. So
Here
you should do
specific things, and I include
right. So now then the Torah says, and so you should do for anything that you find that your brother lost, and you found, right? So the Talmud right away says that, so why does the Torah need to mention the donkey, and why does it have to mention the garment, right?
Why not just say everything?
Just say anything that your brother lost and you found, you have to return. So there's a principle that whenever something was included in the general category and then it's mentioned specifically, it's coming to teach you something not about itself alone, but rather about the entire category. So the Gemara says that from the simla, from the garment, we learn, the fact that the Torah mentions the garment, we learn that just like a garment has an owner and it has identification marks, in other words, it can be identified. So likewise, anything that you know it belongs to someone and it has identification marks that would allow it to be returned to the rightful owner, those such things have to be returned. Whereas if you find something that has identification marks but it doesn't have an owner, or if you find something that has an owner but it doesn't have identification marks, it doesn't have simanim, those things you may keep. Okay? So for example, you mentioned money. Money has a serial number, right? Not coins, but bills, right? They have serial numbers, every bill. So theoretically, that is a proper ID, right? So let's say somebody comes and says, okay, I lost 100 shekels and I know the serial number on the bill. Do you have to return it or not?
If it's the right number?
If it's the right number, I'm saying he's the right number. You have to return it?
I would
You
say
both
yes.
say yes. Yeah. Well, you're both wrong. What do you say? Well, now you already know the answer, Yehuda Leib, right?
Explain why.
You're still there, Yehuda Leib? You don't have to return. You found $100 and somebody comes and says, I lost it and I can tell you the serial number.
You still don't have to return it.
You don't have to return it. But he's giving you a siman. Why don't you return it? Come on, it's a logical answer. You can figure it out.
He could have guessed a random number.
Let's say he didn't guess. It's not so easy to guess a serial number.
You might as well buy a lottery ticket. You gotta guess that number.
Right. So why don't you have to return it? Because all that proves
It's not a common sin.
it's not. What do you mean? It's not a common siman?
Like it's not something that people would normally know.
So then that would make it even a better siman. That would make it an even better. That would be even a better proof. If it's not something common, then all the more reason to believe that this was his money. I just gave you a hint. I said this was his money.
Now it's your money?
No.
Oh, that.
What do you do with money?
He could have gone to the shuk, given someone $100.
That's
That
right.
person could have lost.
That's right, exactly. Money is made to be used, and money gets transferred from the same 20 shekel bill that you got and changed at the shuk. That may have already passed through who knows how many hands, right? At 8 o'clock in the morning, one person bought something with it, and then the next customer, the vendor gave it to somebody else as change, and then that person who got it as change went and bought something at the next stall and
We're
gave.
talking about somebody who lost 100 shekel bill.
Yeah. So he
And someone who found a 100
you
shekel
found
bill.
100 shekel bill,
Right.
and the guy happens to know the serial number
How could
because
that be?
because he knows it. Okay, because at 8 o'clock in the morning he had that $100 bill.
Are you serious?
But doesn't mean
How
that he
would you
lost it.
identify the 100 shekel bill or dollar bill, whatever?
Let's see, with a serial number.
But how would you know that the person who found it has that bill?
You took a chance. What's the difference?
That's
You
a totally random.
No, the point is like this.
I don't understand the logic.
You found the 100 shekel bill, right?
Yeah.
You and somebody comes and says, "Hey, I heard you found 100 shekels, right?
Right.
I lost 100 shekels, and I can prove to you that it's mine.
Right.
What's the proof? I know
I'll tell
the
you the
serial number, right? That doesn't prove that it's his. It's proof that at one time it proved that maybe at one time it was his.
Couldn't you do
But
the
it
same
doesn't
thing
mean
with a watch?
no. It doesn't.
So why can't you say that about every object?
Well, that's exactly the question that Barak is asking also, because money specifically is made for transfer all the time. You don't go around, transferring a watch. The Talmud's language is kesef lahotza'ah nitna. Money is made for spending. People spend money. People don't just keep money. Okay? So since money is made for spending, so good. So I say, okay, Chaim Yankel, yes, I accept that at one point this bill was yours, and you wrote down the for some reason or other, you wrote down the serial number, and you know the serial number. But it doesn't mean that you didn't go and then buy something with it, and that was and could have transferred 10 hands between the time that you had it and the time that I found it.
What did you find a rare coin?
You find a rare coin, which is the kind of a thing that people would not go and use, right? Assuming that they know that it's a rare coin. Understand? That's so. In all likelihood, most people don't know that it's a rare coin. Right? Okay. Now, that's one thing about money. The other thing about money is it's now, but we also have to understand that just because I lost something, and just because it doesn't have any identification mark, and why should you be allowed to keep it? Why should you, the finder, be allowed to keep it? Maybe I can't prove that it's mine, but it's not yours. Why does the Torah allow you? Why does the Torah allow you to keep it? Leave money. An example of what you can keep: money.
Something that doesn't have any simanim.
Yeah, we don't consider money. We don't consider the serial number to be simanim.
Okay. Fine.
So money doesn't have a siman. So why can you keep it? It's one thing that you can say you're not obligated to return it to me because I can't prove that it's mine. Okay, fine. But why can you keep it?
Should give it to tzedakah.
Yeah, give it to tzedakah, whatever. But why? But why should you be able to keep it? Or let's say you found something else that doesn't have a siman. You found an apple. You found something that doesn't, right? So the Gemara explains that the reason you can keep it is because, in effect, since it doesn't have a siman, since it doesn't have a way by which the owner can identify it, right? Therefore, the owner is mityaesh. The owner gives up hope of getting it back. And when he gives up hope of getting it back, he's in effect relinquishing his ownership.
So you found something that doesn't have ownership.
That's right. So when you find money, let's say, or you found an apple, or anything that doesn't have a siman, the assumption is that the owner is aware that he lost it. Okay, there's a whole discussion in the Gemara about what if he found it before the owner actually gave up ownership. That's called Yeyush Shelo Midat. But maybe we'll get to that later. But the point, the Yeyush means despair, giving up hope that you're going to get it back is in effect relinquishing your ownership. Now, what's a case of?
I want to ask a question. What if something has simanim and a person feels like him? Let's say you left something in New York. It has a siman. Now you came back here.
or
You feel
even,
like you'll never see that
or
again.
even, or yeah. So,
That's
or
also
well,
really sweet.
there we already said that if it's in a place that the majority of people do not follow this law of Hashavat Aveda, so then you're going to be miyash, and whoever finds it can keep it, right?
And if they do keep the law.
But if you're in a place where the law is kept, so like we said, if you find something that you have to return and the owner doesn't show up, basically you
You have to wait a year.
no, you have to keep on announcing it over the Shalosh Regalim, but it never really becomes yours.
What do you do with it?
Well, if it's something that doesn't scream and make noise at night, okay, and you don't have to feed it,
Yeah,
you put it away. You make a note with it. I have a pair of scissors upstairs in my drawer that I went to the mikveh one day and Leibush told me that he had forgotten his scissors there. I saw a pair of scissors hanging on the hook, so I figured those were his, and I brought them home. And he said, "No, these are not his." And now I've got this problem. I've got something. I can't go and just put it back because it was lost. I took it. Once I took it, I'm responsible to get it to the right owner. So I put up a sign there and so on, but nobody claimed it. So it's in a drawer and with a note attached to it that this is not mine. And when Mashiach is going to come and the owner is going to show up, I'll give it back to him.
How long do you hold it on
until Mashiach comes?
You pass it on to your kids?
Yeah.
It's an inheritance.
Yeah. An inherited mitzvah.
Okay.
An inherited obligation. I mean, they're not necessarily responsible, but that's what you would do. So now, what's the case of something that, again, that has another case of, another case is like this. Look at the words in the verse. It says, "Asher tovad mimenu umitzata." It was lost from him, and you found it. Now, what if he lost it? He lost something of value, and he lets everybody know, "I am not giving up ownership." Even though it doesn't have a siman, I'm letting everybody know I'm not giving up ownership. Right?
Meaning the person who lost it says that.
Yeah.
What if he says that over money? He can't say that.
So let's look at it for a second. Let's put it this way. Let's say you found money at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Reuven lost the money, and at 9:01, you find it, or you see somebody getting onto a bus, and as he's getting onto the bus, some money falls out of his pocket, right? And when you pick it up, he for sure hasn't given up ownership yet, because the fact of the matter is he doesn't even realize yet that he lost it. You can only see, why can't I give up ownership? Let's say I lost something and you found it in the interim, and then after you found it, then I realize I lost it, and it's something that I normally would give up ownership, right? But my giving up ownership at that point is not really valid. For example, let's say I think I lost something, and it turns out that it's actually in my pocket. But in the meantime, I said I'm giving up ownership. Well, you can't give up ownership on something that's in your pocket, because it's in your pocket, right? Now, if the Torah makes you the finder, the guardian of that object, right? So, and I say, well, I'm giving up ownership. It's like you being the guardian of that object for me. It's almost as if I'm holding it in my hand. If I'm holding something in my hand and I'm saying, I give up ownership on this. The words don't mean anything. Why don't they mean anything? Because the actual fact is that I'm holding it in my hand.
So if you put it on the floor and walked
If I
away,
put it on the floor in my house, it doesn't mean anything. If I want to give up ownership of something, I have to put it out in a place which is not my property and say I'm giving up ownership, then I've given up ownership. Okay? So if you found something before the owner actually gave up ownership, in reality, you found something that belongs to someone, and if you and therefore you may not keep it. However, that's only true if it was lost in such a way that it's lost to him, but it's not lost to the rest of the world. For example, well, hold on, that wasn't very clear. Let's clarify. Normally, you find something, if it doesn't have a siman, if it doesn't have an identification, the assumption is that the owner already knows that he lost it, and he's already relinquished ownership. Okay? Now, suppose, for example, he loses something in such a way that you know that he doesn't, it's lost not only to him, but it's lost to everyone. Meaning to say, for example, he left something on his front lawn and the tide came in and washed it away. And it happens to be that a couple of miles further down the road, the tide washed it up onto your property. Okay? And he comes and he says, well, I never gave up ownership. Doesn't matter. You can keep it. Why? Because it says over here that when do you have the mitzvah of returning something? Asher tovad mimenu umitzata. It was lost from him, and when it was lost from him, it was not lost to the rest of the world. But if it was lost to him and lost to everyone, in other words, when the tide took it away, right? It's lost to everybody. It's almost like, to put it in different words, it's like Hashem took it away from him. Understand? Hashem took it away from everyone. Happens to be that tomorrow the tide washed it up on your shore. Understand? But basically, that object, once it was washed away by the tide, and he does not have any ability to go and salvage it, it's lost and it's now ownerless, even though it has identification. Now this.
If it has a name on it.
Even if it has a name on it, even if you know that yeah, I know that this was his.
What if it's a boat?
Yeah.
His boat was on the shore. The tide took it out and carried it a few miles downstream, and it landed in somebody else's.
So, but that wasn't lost to everybody.
Let's say it went into the ocean for a week.
It's not lost to everybody. It's
when is
floating.
it lost to everybody?
It was taken out. Let's say it was.
What defines lost to everybody?
Okay, so that's a good question. That's what I'm about to discuss. Okay. When in the olden days when a ship sunk, anybody that, yes, you're back? Okay?
Yeah, sorry, I have to go down.
Okay. Be well. Speak to you tomorrow. Call to bye. It's a ship sunk and there's a treasure on the ship, and so on, right? And deep water, it's lost to everybody, right?
In the port.
Anywhere that that nobody can get it. Okay. Now, it's an interesting question for nowadays, because nowadays there's technology with which divers can go down to great deep depths, right? And there's all these Spanish ships down loaded with gold and from other countries and so on. And the question is it still considered to be lost to the owner, given that there's now technology with which he can get it?
Those things the owner is no longer alive.
Well, what if the country claims it? What if
they claim it?
What if the descendants claim it? Well, here's another case. Okay, the Germans, the Nazis, took away possessions of the Jews, including art and so on. As a matter of fact, when I was on the plane, I saw a movie about a famous piece of art called "Woman in Gold." Have you heard about it? You saw the movie? Pretty amazing, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And have you seen it? No. So
Okay.
So let's say a thief steals something, right? The owner thinks he's never going to get it back, and then the thief goes and sells it to somebody else or whatever, right? Can the owner come to the purchaser and say, "That's mine"? I'm not going to tell you what the halacha is right now because I'm not 100% sure, but I don't want to mislead, right? But there's no question that if you know that this is a stolen object, you're not allowed to buy it. Okay?
It's complicated.
This, what you thought was a simple mitzvah of returning lost objects, is actually an extremely complicated subject. It's an extremely complicated subject. Okay? So we learn all these laws from these 3 verses, and so again, if it was lost in such a way that the owner lost it, but it's not lost to anybody else, so then the owner can say, I hope that somebody else is going to find it, and I will go and I will present my simanim, my identification marks, and I'll get it back. But if it's lost in such a way that it's lost to everybody, okay, so then he can stand there and scream as much as he wants, saying that he's not giving up ownership.
So what does it mean, lost to everybody?
Like I gave you an example, it was washed away by the tide. The fact that you found it afterwards because the tide washed it up, that happens to be a fluke of a thing, but at the time that it was lost to everybody.
So I asked you if it has his name on it.
It's lost. It's lost.
And then I said, what about a boat?
Now the boat,
which clearly I did. Let's say it's a boat that even has his name on it.
Yeah, but if it's a boat and it's still floating, so it's not really lost to everybody.
That's not considered lost.
It's not lost to everyone. Somebody can find it.
But if it was a basketball, sitting on his, his shore, whatever it is.
Is it floating?
Floated out, yeah. You're talking about something that's sunk and then ended up?
Yeah, it's something that got sunk,
So something that couldn't be found on the surface.
That's something that no one can find right now.
Something that fell into a well.
Something that fell into a well. Something that's a sunken boat. That a sunken boat. It was lost to everybody.
So you're saying every sunken boat, according to halacha, is free for all,
Right.
whoever finds it.
Right. However, it would be a question of how deep was the water? In other words, and it will be a question about today. Let's say somebody's boat sinks today, and there are ways of retrieving it. So then it's not lost to everybody. But if it's something that's lost and there's no way of retrieving it, so then that's that. Okay. So then the Gemara goes into a discussion. What if I lost something, but I don't know that I lost it? Had I known that I lost it, I would have given up ownership. But the fact is, I don't know that at the moment, I don't know that I lost it. And in the meantime, you found it. So the Talmud calls this kind of a case of Yeush Shelo Midat, giving up ownership without being aware that you're giving up ownership. Do we consider it to be Yeush, or do we say it's not? And it's a big machlokes between Abaye and Rava. And the Gemara's conclusion is that Yeush Shelo Midat lo havi Yeush. Giving up ownership unconsciously is not considered
It's not considered despair, but is it still enough for a person to possess the object?
No.
So how would you know the object that you have if somebody gave up on it or not?
Only so if it doesn't have a siman, and it's like normal circumstances, so then what do you call it?
So that's what he's saying. You have items that you set aside for Mashiach.
That's right.
The ones that have no siman and are in common use, like money or the apple or a bottle of Coke.
Yeah.
Then that you know the person.
The assumption is that the person knows that he lost it and he gave up ownership.
Something that's identifiable and nobody claims it, even if then you're saying there's no use.
If they have a siman, if it has a siman, the assumption is that the owner did not give up ownership.
And so you have to set aside.
Yeah. So the whole thing of Yeush Shelo Midat is only in a case of where the object doesn't have a siman.
It doesn't have a siman.
When it does not have a siman, and you happen to have found it before the
but it's not
owner.
something in common use. Like for example, this glass.
This glass doesn't have a siman.
Right, but it's not something of common use. It's something that I know that belonged to somebody, right?
Yeah.
It's not like money.
But it doesn't have a siman.
So that would be Yeush.
It could be Yeush Midat. Because you.
So what's Yeush? What is it? Melota?
Yeush Shelo Midat is that you found that glass before I was aware that I lost it.
So what could I do if I found this glass? Would I be allowed to use it?
Well, if it's not going to suffer from wear and tear, you'd be allowed to use it.
But this could break.
So if it's fragile and it could break from your usage, you would have to pay for it if you broke it, yes.
Meaning if the owner came back and said, oh, that's my mug, I know, then you pay for it. It was broken.
Okay. And if it's something that's going to suffer from wear and tear, then you're not allowed to use it.
An animal also suffers from wear and tear.
Well,
it ages if you use an ox.
Yeah. But concerning the animals, we already said. If it's producing income or if it's not producing income to cover its expenses. If it's not producing income to cover its expenses, you sell it right away.
So a chair would suffer from wear and tear.
A chair would suffer from wear and tear, right?
Okay. And all of this.
Did I
you're
tell
not
you the
allowed to
story
know.
last week about the guy with his sister?
Not yet. I don't remember this.
So this Baal Tshuva guy comes from America, and he becomes very devout, and he's learning in a yeshiva. And in the meantime, his sister is involved in a cult.
You did mention this.
Was it last week?
I don't remember. Tell you? I don't remember the story. I just remember the start of it.
He really wants her to come to Israel and be exposed to Judaism and get to see what Judaism is about. And he keeps on writing to her, and she says to him, I'm not interested, I'm not interested, I'm not interested, leave me alone. So he offers her a free ticket. And he says to her, listen, just come for 10 days. The only thing I'll take you around touring and everything. I just want you to come to one class, one Torah class. So eventually he nurtured her enough that she agreed to come. And every day they're in the old city, and there's a list there by Jeff Seidel's center about this rabbi's giving a class, and that rabbi's giving a class. All these great rabbis are giving these wonderful classes, and every day she says, nah, not today, not today, not today. I want to do this, I want to do this instead. Anyway, it's the last day before she's going back to America, and she says, okay, listen, I promised I would go to one class. Okay, let's go find a class. It happens to be that there was only one class being offered to the public that day, and the class was being given by this elderly rabbi who came in and gave a lesson on the laws of returning lost objects, and he was pretty boring. And this young man, he's thinking to himself, oh my God, I put so much effort in bringing my sister here. And every time she looks at him, she's looking at him with this is really interesting. This is really spiritual. This is you're really catching my interest here. And he's thinking Hashem, what's going on? I made such an effort to bring her. I wanted to come back to Yiddishkeit. And anyway, what can you do? It's out of his hands, right? So what happens is that he takes her back to the airport. She says goodbye. She says, I'm happy that you found what you're interested in. And bye. She goes back to the States, goes back to her commune and to her guru. She's the guru's girlfriend. And one day, not long after, they go into town. They have to buy some things. And they're walking along the main street. And there's a wallet on the ground. The guru picks it up, wants the cash in it, takes the cash out, and dumps the wallet in the garbage can. Doesn't even bother to look to see identification, nothing. And she looks at him and she says, what did you just do? She says, it's all a matter of karma. The guy who lost it had bad karma, and obviously this money was intended for me. She says, you're not even going to go into one of the stores nearby and ask if anybody's looking for it? He said, no. She turned around and she walked away from him. She left him.
It's karma.
How do you like that for Hashgacha Pratit?
There you go.
Amazing.
The right rabbi. She went to the right lesson.
Hashem arranged that she went to the right lesson. I think I read that in one of Hanoch Teller's books. You read those? Hanoch Teller's?
No, I don't think
None
so.
of them? Good stories.
Yeah.
Yes. And from both of them, I've got a bunch of them.
We have one at home, Sunset.
Sunset
And all
is...
of these rabbis that passed away.
Yeah. So there's also good stories there too, yeah. Anyway, you can watch him on YouTube also, Hanoch Teller.
Yeah,
But he's sort of you have to like his style. I mean, he has a style, And Anyway, so the Nachman says that Ein shum yeush ba'olam. There's no such thing as giving up. A Jew doesn't give up. Klal. There's no such thing as giving up. The Nachman says that, or somebody says, the rule is that yeush shalom midat lo haviyeh. Consciously being aware of it is not considered like you gave up ownership. So there's an interpretation that reads like this: if somebody gives up ownership, if somebody falls into despair, it's because he's lacking that. Yeush, if somebody gives up, it's shalom midat. It's because he's lacking the consciousness to realize that you don't give up. So, and the
So
Nachman
what's the
says,
definition of Yush?
well, despair. If somebody gives up and says, "I've done so many sins,"
People say that all the time, but then they get back on their feet. They say, I give up, I can't take it anymore. But then the next day they're unsure.
so they didn't really Baruch Hashem. That's right. So any use, but we have to know that we don't give up. Even don't give up. So Mashiach should come quickly. We want him already now. And
Can you mention something about Shiluach HaKen?
about what?
Shiluach
Yeah, what
HaKen.
about Shiluach HaKen? It's a very
How do you do it?
from
Sending
what I
the
understand
mother
is
bird.
that there's a
Sending the mother bird away before
Oh,
we take
that.
the eggs.
well, the simple shot is if you find the nest and the mother bird is there, you want to take what's in the nest, and you have to send the mother bird away. But there's apparently a lot of halachas about it, and it's a rarely performed mitzvah because it's not like if you have a chicken coop and you're taking the eggs, there's no mitzvah of shiluach haken.
Right, we're talking about a nest in a tree or something.
And we're talking about a wild nest, yeah. But I don't know the rest of the details.
I remember once in Bateran, there was a nest in the window.
Yeah.
And everyone was very excited because there were eggs there.
Right.
And they told me, come pick up the egg so that you own it, now put it back down.
Because
I just do they tell me there.
yeah. So I don't know the details of this mitzvah. All I know is that the Gemara says, "Haomer al ken tzipor yagiru rachamecha." Somebody says, "Wow, Hashem, your mitzvahs are so compassionate." Mishatkin oto, we tell them to be quiet, because we have to see God's mitzvahs as decrees. Because there are mitzvahs that, like for example, Rav Steinzal says, there's a mitzvah that when somebody does certain transgressions, he gets lashes. So what happens? So 39 lashes. So the guy is going to say, "Wow, God, you're so compassionate." He's suffering, It's Hashem's mitzvahs are basically decrees. Yeah, certain mitzvahs we see this way, but if we try to say, I can explain every mitzvah, so then what you're saying is that I have God figured out. Somebody once came to the Kosker Rebbe and told him about some kind of a tragic thing, and he says, "How can you explain that?" The Kosker Rebbe says, a God that I could explain, I wouldn't worship. A God that is.
So what did the Rambam do? Did he try to explain
He didn't succeed with it. He tried to give some kind of rationalization. That's true.
I heard a talk by Micha Gutman. You heard of him? Ein Prat, I think is what he means. It was an interesting talk. So he said, he wrote a book about the Rambam. He's Israeli.
Mm-hmm.
His mother's in America.
Yeah.
He wrote a book that took off like crazy here in Israel about the Rambam. And he said, the Rambam said, I know that I'm making a mistake because people don't want a religion they can understand. So I'm going to explain this stuff, but I know that that's not what people connect with.
He wrote the book in Arabic.
Judeo-Arabic. It's not straight on Arabic.
Okay, if you say
It's the
so.
whole department they give you for Judeo-Arabic.
Fine.
Yeah.
But in his time and in his generation, Aristotelian philosophy was very, very popular. And people really believed that, it's a shame for a human being to do something that he cannot rationally explain. That is an offense to your humanity. So therefore, a lot of Jews had left Judaism because they couldn't rationally explain a lot of the mitzvahs. So he went ahead and he tried to show that there is rationale. But it didn't succeed.
You here for Shabbos?
I think so.
Sudash Lishit.
Yes, Hashem. We'll see tomorrow.
How did it go last week?
It was nice.
Yeah.
Shabbat. Okay, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. A word from our sponsor. You know who our sponsor is?
Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Kadosh Baruch Hu, God.
He's my sponsor.